Okay, last time we talked about definitions. And what did we get done? Well, we pretty much just talked about definitions for words or terms, strings of words. Now, more definitions! Well, talking about the definition of something else. Not specific little terms, but whole issues. Issue analysis. Why do we need to do that? Well, let's say, what if I asked you, do you believe in God? How would you even start to answer that? People have been asking that for ages and generally not really reaching agreement, which is bad. We like definite knowledge in critical thinking. We like to advance human understanding. We don't like to just go around in circles eternally disagreeing. So it's helpful for us to unpack issues and classify them. So if I was asking, does God exist? That issue, to even start to answer that, we'd have to first settle the issue of what is God? Because it's hard to know if something exists or not if you don't even know what it is. What would the world look like if it does exist? What would the world look like if it doesn't exist? There's a thing. Is that it? Is that God? Is that not God? So, a lot of times, to really even approach one issue, we need to settle another issue. We'd say that another issue has logical priority over the first issue, or that the issue is logically subsequent to another issue. Okay, so if we're really gonna do a good job and get stuff done, we almost sometimes need to make an agenda, an order of inquiry. To even answer that, what would we need to answer first? Like, let's say, well, someone said, what should we do about global warming? Big question. They're asking the question of how to fix it. Or, well, no, if first we need to, lastly, we would first need to decide, should we bother to fix it before we go into how to fix it? Because maybe you live in Siberia and it's cold all the time, and for you, global warming is a good thing. Maybe we shouldn't fix it. Maybe we should let it go. Probably not, but maybe. You might actually have to have that argument with someone in Siberia and it's really cold, and they might at least think that global warming is a good idea. But we wouldn't even be able to begin at, should we fix it? That assumes that it's happening at all. There are people who think that it's not happening at all. Some people think we're going into an ice age, actually. So for those ice agers, you need to first settle the issue of, is global warming happening? First, you'd have to establish that before you can address whether it's worth fixing and then how to do it. Is it happening at all would require deciding on how to measure it. Should we just go with the thermometer over the years? Or should we go by CO2 levels and methane levels, saying that CO2 and methane levels are predictive of global warming in the long run? How we should best measure it depends on what we think causes it. So to really make progress on the issue of how to fix global warming, we might end up getting like 4 or 5 questions back. Or just be disagreeing forever. Which is why climate conferences tend to be big things that take a long time. It's a complicated issue. But you do see that in attempting to actually make headway with a complicated issue, it helps to set an agenda of inquiry, an order of issues that we have to answer first to even really talk coherently about the next one, and that next one will help us speak meaningfully on this one. A rational order is useful. And aside from ordering, it's also helpful to classify issues in a few ways: factual, interpretive, and evaluative. A factual issue might be, is global warming happening? An interpretive one might be, well, someone said I have these CO2 levels, data on carbon dioxide. Okay, cool. What does that have to do with global warming? It proves that global warming's happening. Does it? Maybe it does. Can we interpret the CO2 facts as showing that global warming exists? How to interpret facts to reach bigger conclusions is a major set of issues. Factual, what do we write down for the CO2 level? Interpretive, can we make the logical jump from CO2 levels to global warming? And then, beyond factual and interpretive, there's evaluative. Is global warming a bad thing? Or if you live in a cold environment, maybe it's a good thing. Whether it's good or bad, can we affect it? Should we even bother trying to change it? Those should issues and good or bad issues are called evaluative issues. So we have 3 kinds. Interpretive issues just try to establish more distant general facts from little facts. Basically, it's almost a subset of factual issues. But factual or interpretive versus evaluative are 2 pretty different things. Like if someone was some of America's favorite questions that we like to get nowhere with, should abortion be illegal? No matter how much scientific research or archival research establishing facts you did, a bigger pile of facts isn't really going to get you to a should by itself. The should is sort of more a personal, ethical judgment. And so evaluative, judgmental issues are sort of a different animal than factual and interpretive. Factual and interpretive issues will help inform judgments, but they're not judgments in themselves. Okay, so Justin's splitting hairs today. Definitions within definitions. Why is it important to clearly differentiate evaluative issues from the other 2? Aside from the idea that we just like precise definitions and vocab words. Aside from that, confusing evaluative issues with the other 2 can cause some bad, some argument, conflict kind of things. So let's say after the 9/11 attacks, someone's explaining why people thought it was a good idea to fly airplanes into buildings. And then people will probably get upset at him. Oh, you think the terrorists are right that we should fly airplanes into buildings? That would be well, maybe the speaker does think that. I don't know. Maybe some do. But chances are that's a confusion of a factual or interpretive issue with an evaluative one. Maybe the guy's not saying it's a good idea. He's just explaining the history, the facts, and the causal interpretive links between those facts that led these other people on the other side of the world to think that something was a good idea. Being able to tell apart an explanation, this is why these crazy people thought it was a good idea, from a justification, it is actually a good idea because, is important. When you conflate those two and mess that up, you get things like confusing a professor of 20th century German history with a neo-Nazi. Or worse yet, thinking some neo-Nazi is a professor of history. Issue classification is important if you want to not be misled, or not mislead yourself, and not end up attacking as horrible people who are just trying to explain things and not really defending the bad people, but just sort of explaining a complex phenomenon that probably does need explaining because it was shocking to everyone. If we want good data and good explanations, it's essential to know when someone's giving an evaluation, this is good or this is bad, versus just explaining some facts or explaining an interpretation of why something happened. So differentiating factual and interpretive versus evaluative issues is important. A lot like establishing the order of inquiry, where when we get stuck trying to settle an issue, we take it apart and realize that there are smaller questions that are logically prior to the thing we really want to answer. But to make any progress on the thing we really want to answer, we have to settle these other prior issues. If we can do that, then we can make real progress. And if we can't do that, then at least we understand why we aren't making real progress. And that's issue classification and agenda of inquiry. Talk to you again soon.